Hey, hey, we're back. It's Dr. J with Quadratic Functions Part 2. So, not much else to cover. We've covered most of the important details. A few more things we want to talk about today are intercepts. Last time we only talked about the y-intercept. That's the abbreviation for y-intercept. The y-intercept is always 0, comma, and then you have to figure out the value. We call that evaluating whatever the y value happens to be. So you essentially just plug in x equals 0. The y-intercept is definitely going to be the easier intercept to do. The x-intercepts, there's typically 2 of them. They're a little bit harder because there's possibly 2 answers. Not necessarily, but there are 2 possible solutions. You're going to set y equal to 0 and solve for x. Okay. So the y-intercept will be pretty straightforward. We could do that like right away as soon as we get a problem. The x-intercepts take a little time, not necessarily as quick as the y-intercept. So you have to remember some of the techniques for solving from Chapter 2. So we'll be doing a little bit of a review of Chapter 2 today. Everything else we've already discussed. We've already discussed the vertex. We've already discussed the vertex form. We've discussed how to draw the graph. I'll probably do a few more of those just to keep that alive. We've already talked about domain and range. So this will pretty much wrap it up. Let me just do a couple more examples before the weekend so you'll be all ready for the test on Monday. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and do one. Find the intercepts. So we have y equals x squared minus 4x plus 3. All right, let's do the y-intercept first. That's going to be the easy one. Yeah, just plug in x equals 0. So you're going to get y equals 0 squared minus 4 times 0 plus 3. You could probably do all of this in your head, and you get y equals 3. Make sure you give the answer as an ordered pair, and it must be in the right order. It's 0 and then 3. Yeah, x is 0 and y is 3. So make sure you put it in the right order. The x-intercepts, there's typically 2 of them, so that's why we put the letter S on this one. There's never 2 y-intercepts. There's always only 1 y-intercept because this is a function. Yeah, so if you plug in an x, you're only going to get out 1 y. But you could get 2 x's for the same y. So we're going to plug in y equals 0. Notice where the y variable is. The y variable is on the left-hand side. So your equation is going to look backwards. This y is going to be 0 here. I like to rewrite it like this. X squared minus 4x plus 3 and then equals 0. You don't have to do that. You can leave the 0 on the left-hand side if you want. But you've been seeing me do these problems for several months now. I typically solve from left to right, although that's not a law. That's just because I'm right-handed, so I go from left to right. Try factoring first. Factoring is always going to be the easiest method. So two numbers that multiply to be 3 but add to be -4, so you get the answer pretty quickly. X minus 3, x minus 1. You're going to set those equal to 0. Just reviewing chapter 2, and then you're going to move the digits to the other side. You're going to get x equals 3. You can do this with mental math. I know many of you were really good at this on the last test. So if you already know how to do it, you can jump right from here to here. Just make sure you don't make a sign error. Pluses and minuses often get mixed up when you're doing this process. Okay. You cannot type your answer this way. You have to type your answer as pairs. So the x-intercepts are 3, 0, and 1, 0. The larger one is 3, 0. The smaller one is 1, 0. I don't really care which one you tell me first. Just follow the directions. Sometimes the directions will say, which one is the smaller one? Well, the smaller one is 1, 0. The larger one is 3, 0. Now you could put them in order if you really want. Put the smaller one first and the larger one second. I already wrote them down, so it is what it is at this point. Okay, that's the best case scenario. That's the best case scenario for this. It's where you can factor it. They get worse. Okay. Example 2. Same question. Find the intercepts. I'm just going to kind of go through the different possibilities, how complicated these could be. Example 2, find the intercepts. Remember, f of x just means y. Okay. So let's find the y-intercept. We're going to plug in 0 for x. And you're going to get 4. And remember, this just means y. So essentially, you're saying y is equal to 4. Yeah. And so the y-intercept is 0, 4. Remember, x is 0. That's what all these zeros are representing, x. So that's it. I hope nobody gets the y-intercept wrong. I'm not going to try and trick you on the test. I'm going to make the y-intercept very easy. Now the x-intercept's a little bit tougher. All right. So for the x-intercept, you are setting the y equal to 0. All right. And go ahead and try to factor it. Give it a try. But don't drive yourself crazy over it. If you can't find two numbers that multiply to be the constant term and then add to be the middle coefficient, then it's not factorable. So I'm not going to spend very much time on this one. Yeah, there's no possible way. The only numbers that make a multiply to be 4 are 1 times 4 and 2 times 2, and neither of those are ever going to come out to be 10. right? So forget about it. It's not factorable. I put a few of them on there that are factorable just to kind of remind you of how factoring works, but it's not very likely that all of them are going to be factorable. So now you're going to have to use completing the square. I like to move my 0 to the right-hand side before I complete the square. Okay, so we're going to subtract 4 from both sides. I'm running out of room, so why don't I copy this answer here? Y-intercept 0, 4. And now I can erase all of this. Give me a little bit more space to work. So I've got x squared plus 10x equals negative 4. Remember the process from chapter 2? You take half of the middle term. So half of 10 is 5. Then you square it. 5 squared is 25. Then you add to both sides. So you're going to add 25 to both sides. Both sides of the equation. So you got your, this will be 21. And this will be x squared plus 10x plus 25. Now you factor it. If you do this procedure correctly, the completing the square review, then you will always get a factorable expression on the left-hand side. Okay, then you take the square root of both sides. Don't forget the plus or minus. That's what I mean when I say there are two possibilities. Yeah, that's what the plus or minus mean. And then you're going to subtract 5 from both sides. Make sure you put the negative 5 into the left, to the front of the plus or minus. Never put it in this right-hand side, and never, ever put it inside the radical. And then remember, you got to separate them out. Into two separate solutions. I'm going to want a decimal for most of these answers, if they are decimals. I mean, if they come out to be whole or integer, obviously you don't need a calculator. But I brought my calculator today. So we're going to do the square root of 21. That is about 4.5825. I'll probably round that in a minute. 4.5825. I don't typically recommend rounding this right away. In fact, you're probably better off just copying down the entire decimal. Round it when you're done. Let me read the directions. Round to 2 decimal places. 2 decimal places. So we've got x is approximately, so negative 5 plus that. So what's that? 5825. 4 decimals is plenty for now, and then plus -5. So that's going to be negative 0.4175. I want 2 decimal places, so 4.2. All right, remember how to round. I know I don't probably need to go through this, but you look at the 3rd decimal. If it's 5 or greater, you're going to round up. All right, and then the other one is going to be right here. That'll be negative 9.58. Again, I'm rounding to 2 decimal places. So I'm looking at the 3rd decimal place. The 3rd decimal place is less than 5. So we're just simply throwing it away if it's less than 5. All right, so those are your X-intercepts. Make sure you write your answer correctly. So your answers will be X-intercepts, plural. There's 2 of them. Put the smaller one first, negative 9.58, comma 0. Last time I didn't do this, so I figure I'll do it this time. And the larger one goes second. All right, and if you're a little rusty on your number sense, remember a negative 9 is smaller than negative 0.4, right? Because it's a larger negative, so technically a larger negative is smaller. I do get a lot of people that will get these numbers right, but then put them in the wrong order because your brain sees the 9 and thinks that 9 is bigger than 4 or something like that. But it's not. Negative 9 is smaller than negative 4, or negative 0.4. Okay, so there you go. That is what you do if the problem is not factorable. All right, let's try another one. Example 3. Y equals negative 4x squared plus 16x. Why don't we go a little bit farther with this one? Let's find the intercepts. Find the vertex, find the axis of symmetry, and sketch the graph. After you've sketched the graph, state the domain and range. So the whole enchilada, as we say. Everything. I want even the olive. Okay. Let's start with the intercepts, since that's what we've been working on recently. So let's go ahead and run through the easy ones. We got the y-intercept. You're going to plug in 0 for x. And you get 0. Yeah. So the y-intercept is 0, 0. If this happens, where you get double zeros, it's also one of the x-intercepts. So this is kind of like a buy one, get one, only if you get double zeros. All right. If you get double zeros, that's the origin. The origin is the only point that double counts. It counts as both an x-intercept and a y-intercept. All right, let's do the x-intercepts now. X-intercepts, we're going to set y equal to 0. So y is equal to 0. I'm just skipping ahead and putting it on the right-hand side to save a little bit of my limited whiteboard space here. Okay, try to factor this first before you use any fancy techniques like completing the square or the quadratic formula or something, which those techniques do still work. It's much easier if you can just try factoring. Notice both of these terms are divisible by -4, and they both contain a factor of x. So you can easily remove a -4x. Be careful when you remove a negative from a positive 16. This turns into a -4. So you're going to split this up. And you're going to solve both sides of this. You're going to get 0. This is the one you already had, which is 0, 0. You already had that one. This is the new one. When you add 4 to both sides, you get 4 zeros. So these are your X-intercepts. Okay. I guess that doesn't really get an apostrophe. It's just an abbreviation. So. Remember, you get to count this one twice. So you're going to type it in for a y-intercept, and then you're also going to type it in for an x-intercept. You could actually skip this whole step if you remember to count this one twice. Then that means you didn't need to do this side. But you better remember to solve this side. Yeah, because that's going to be the new one that you didn't have before. All right, let's just document what I have. So I've got 0, 0 is a y-intercept. And 0, 0 and 4, 0 are my x-intercepts. So that's just documenting our work that we already did, and we can move on to something else now. So vertex. And we did this yesterday. So vertex form. This is not in vertex form. Yeah. So we need to do a little bit of work to get this into vertex form. Here are the steps. One more time. All right. Move the constant term over. Well, that was easy. There is no constant term. So we'll skip that step. Divide everybody by the leader, the leading coefficient. Take half of the middle number and square it. Add that number to both sides. So half of -4 is -2. -2 squared is 4. So you're going to add to both sides +4. Now you're going to factor the right-hand side. And then you're going to unpack the garage. Everything needs to move back onto the other side. So we're going to go -4, -4. And then we're going to multiply by -4. There's a lot of 4s here. Hopefully you don't get lost in this mess of 4s. So you're going to get y equals -4, x minus 2 squared plus 16. And so your vertex, remember the vertex formula? The opposite of the inside number and exactly the outside number. So opposite of -2 is 2, and the exactly 16 is still exactly 16. So there's There's your vertex. So we got our vertex, we got our intercepts over here. You might as well go ahead and do the axis of symmetry while you're at it. The axis of symmetry is always the x portion of the vertex. Yeah, so that's another buy one, get one free. If you figured out the vertex, then you automatically get the axis of symmetry just by saying x equals whatever the x coordinate is. So that's done as well. All right, now we're going to sketch the graph. When you go to graph it, look at the leader. The leader tells you whether it's up or down. Yeah. If the leader is negative, then it's down. It's opening down like an upside down U shape. If the leader was a positive number, then the parabola would open up like a U. But if it's negative, it goes down like an upside down U. It's good to know that before you start clicking around. If your graph ends up pointing the wrong way, that's a clue that you've done something wrong. Okay. All right. I don't know what to erase first. I guess I can erase a lot of this. Actually, let's try something. I have something. Maybe I could zoom in a little bit. I might regret this if I lose my focus here, so let's see. All right. So let's see where we're at. We have our y-intercept. Now, when you do this on your computer, you must plot the vertex first. So 2 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14. Oh, no, I can't get to 16. Shit. I guess I'm not using the graph board. I'm just going to put a mark and call that 16. I was going to try to use this, but it looks like I only have 10 squares. So what's the point in using the graph board? So that's going to be 16. Let's see. We'll call that 8. We'll call that 4. We'll call that 2. So we have 2 and 16. I changed my mind. I want to put my numbers on that side. Make sure you plot that point first. That's your vertex. Once you've plotted that point, then you can just pick one of these points to finish the graph. I'm going to plot them all. So you've got 0, 0, and you've got 4, 0. And there's your parabola. That was awful. Let me try that again. That's a little better. All right. So you got your x-intercept at 4. You got your other x-intercept at 0, which is also a y-intercept. So the 0, 0 counts as both. You got your vertex at 2 and 16. And so you're good to go. All right. The last thing I asked for was the domain and range. Domain is a free answer. Yeah. Negative infinity to infinity. The range is not free. The range, you have to look at the y values. They go down to negative infinity, so put negative infinity first, and then the 16. So you read the range from the bottom up. It goes from negative infinity all the way up to 16. That's the range. The domain is the x's. The domain is going from negative infinity to positive infinity. But the range is going from negative infinity to 16. And then you have this invisible line down the middle called the axis of symmetry. This x equals 2, sort of an invisible line that goes down the middle. I'm not going to draw it. It's invisible, so we'll just imagine that there's a line there. If you drew this on a piece of paper, you could fold the paper right down the center here, and these two sides would match nicely with each other. Okay. Okay, so what's next? Example 4 is next. Well, focus. I messed with the camera and screwed up the focus. Come back to me. There we go. Hey, we're back. All right, example 4. F of x is 4x squared plus 14x minus 10. Find the x-intercepts and the vertex. Actually, let's find both of the intercepts. I'll just say find all intercepts. I guess we'll probably skip the graph on this one. We'll just find the intercepts and the vertex. Let's find the easy one first. The y-intercept. Just plug in 0. And that one should basically come out for free. Have you caught on yet? I hope you have. It's just going to be the last number, the constant term, if the equation is in standard form. So the y-intercept is always the constant term if the equation is in standard form. And this is in standard form. We call this the A, the B, and the C. A, B, C. That's the standard form. Just remember, standard means alphabet. Yeah, alphabetical. A, B, C is the most standard thing you've ever learned in your life, probably, since you were 5 years old. All right, so go ahead, give it a try. We already know the y-intercept. The x-intercepts will be a little bit tougher. We're going to set this equation equal to 0 and hopefully be able to solve it easily. All right, one thing you can do is you can look to see if there's anything you can remove from all of the terms. Sometimes you get lucky and all of the terms are even, or all of the terms are divisible by 3, or all the terms are divisible by 5, or some number that they all have in common. In this example, it's 2. Okay. So I can divide both sides by 2. And now I have a much easier problem to solve. If you miss this step, it's not going to make you get the wrong answer necessarily. It's just going to mean you're going to suffer, right? And somebody else catches this step, they have a much easier time solving the problem. You will still get the same answer if you don't do this step. It's just going to hurt more. All right, let's go ahead and give it a try, factoring. If factoring doesn't work, we're going to need another technique. All right, so I'm trying factoring. So I've got 2x times 1x. That gives me 2x squared. All right. And then I've got 5 and 1. That gives me 5, negative 5. But then I also have to get a positive 7. So look what happens. If I make both of these positive, 5 and 2 make 7. 5x and 2x make 7x. So that works out, but you don't get negative 5. This is going to be frustrating because every time you get the 7, you're not going to get the negative 5. Watch. So now let's make it so we get the negative 5. So now we have a negative 5 and a positive 1. So now the negative 5 is happy, but the 7's not happy because you're not getting 7. So this is what you call, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Yeah? If you get one of them, you don't get the other one. Yeah? So this is not going to be factorable. You got to know when to quit. All right? I've seen people waste 20 minutes of their test time on one problem because they're so determined to make it work. All right? 1 minute. If you can't do it in 1 minute, another 10 minutes is not going to help. All right? So just give yourself a minute. If you can't do it, try something else. All right? This is a perfect example for the quadratic formula. Yeah? Remember A, B, and C? This is just begging me to do the quadratic formula. If you can't factor it and you see there are 3 different constants, or they don't even have to be different, but there are 3 constants, A, B, and C, that's a classic quadratic formula problem. So let's see if you remember it. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Yeah. How old were you when you learned that formula? 13, maybe 14 years old when you learned that formula? Now you're 20. You still should know it. Okay. I know you're not all 20, but most of you are. Okay. X equals negative 14 plus or minus the square root of 14 squared. My battery's about to die. That was a close call. 14 squared minus 4 times 4. Probably going to have to erase something. Times negative 10 all over 2 times 4. So I've got x equals negative 14 plus or minus 14 squared. You probably know that by heart, but if not, you got your calculator. 14 squared, 196. Is that what you guessed? I always forget that one. Yeah, I know it ends in a 6, but 196, and then you have a negative and another negative, so that's going to be a positive 160. Yeah, 4 times 4 times 10, 160. All over 2 times 4, which is 8. So you got negative 14 plus or minus the square root of 356 all over 8. All right, and now you're going to take the square root of 356. The square root of 356 is 18 and some change. I'm now approximating. This is the symbol for approximately. 18 and some change. I would go out to 4 decimals. Or you can be really safe and just keep all of the decimals until the very end. I would say 4 is, a good amount if you don't want to write down the entire screen. I wouldn't do less than 4, because if you try to be cheap, you'll end up losing points and doing the whole problem over again. Don't be cheap. Remember, we got to keep these separated. So we have negative 14 plus 18.8679 over 8. Okay, and then we have another one that is negative 14 minus 18.8679 over 8. You can never solve both of these at the same time. If you try to solve them both at the same time, you'll get one of them right and the other one wrong. It happens every single time. You can never get them both. The only way to get them both is to split them up and solve them separately. I know, there's no buy one, get one free in this section. You just got to do all the work. All right, but once you've got it this far, it's basically a calculator problem at this point. So you've got your 18.8679. I've got it on my calculator. And then you're going to add negative 14, and then you're going to divide by 8. So this one equals approximately 0.61. All right, once you get it simplified, now you can round it. So I'm rounding to 2 places. And then the other one equals, let's see, 18.8679. Yeah, I'm making that negative. And then I'm adding negative 14. So I get negative 32 and some change. And then I'm dividing that by 8. And I'm rounding to 2 decimal places. So this is negative 4.108. So the 8 is going to round that up to negative 4.11. Yeah. It was 4.108, so I rounded that. All right, 2 decimal places. All right. Let's add that to our list over here. X-intercepts. Let's do the smaller one first, negative 4.11, comma 0, and the larger one, 0.61, comma 0. So you got your 2 different x-intercepts here. The second part of the question was to find the vertex. This is the worst part. This is not in vertex form. Yeah, so that's not very nice. I'd say there's probably like 5 or 6 problems on the homework that are much easier than this. If the equation is already in vertex form, the clue is, does it have parentheses? Yeah. Vertex Form has the parentheses with the exponent outside. Yeah, this thing. Yeah, that's what you're looking for Vertex Form. If you already have that, you're done. You just read the question, type in the answer. You don't even have to do any work. All right. The honeymoon is over, so you're going to have to actually solve all of these equations. No more free answers. Hope you enjoyed all the freebies while they lasted. Okay. I always get rid of F because it's a pain. It's inconvenient and tedious to write f of x, f of x, f of x for the next 10 minutes. So it's much easier to write y. Okay. One more time. I guess this will be the last time that you'll have to see me do this. Move the constant term over. Notice the steps are always the same. Wash, rinse, repeat. Wash, rinse, repeat. All right. That's the first step. Move the constant. Then divide by the liter. Don't worry about the left-hand side. I call the left-hand side my garage. It's okay if your garage is messy. You want to work out the right-hand side and make it look as simple as possible. So 4 divided by 4, that's 1. So there's an invisible 1 here, 1x squared. And then 14 divided by 4, those are not divisible, but they are reducible. So 14/4 reduces to 7/2. I probably don't need to tell you this one more time, but I'm going to tell it to you one more time. Take half of the middle term. That'll be 7/4. Yeah. Half of 7/2 is 7/4. And then square it. 49/16. That's the magic bullet. You're going to add 49/16 to both sides of the equation. You might be tempted to try to solve the left-hand side. Hold your horses. Don't try to actually do the math on the left-hand side. That's just the barn or the garage. Just let them sit. You can come back to them later. And I'm not kidding. If you start messing with the left-hand side, you will regret it. You're going to end up with a big mess on your hands. I've done that before. Somebody tells me not to do it, and I'm going to go try it and see what happens. So you end up in a real world of hurt. Okay, so where are we at? I'm just going to copy the whole question again. I got y plus 10 over 4. It looks messy, but it cleans up nicely. 49/16. I'm going to factor the right-hand side. Let me write it down first before I factor it. It's x squared plus 7/2 x plus 49/16. I need the space here. All right, I just jumped from the bottom back up here to the top. Now, don't worry about the left. Do all your work on the right here. So now we're going to factor this. Two numbers that multiply to be x squared. Well, those are obvious. X times x. Now, what's not so obvious is two numbers that multiply to be 49/16. But just think back 2 minutes to where we just were. 16 was 4 times 4. Yeah, and 49 was 7 times 7. So I mean, it might not seem 100% obvious, but it's obvious, right? It's the numbers that you just had 2 minutes ago. I know some of us have short-term memory loss. You can't even remember, what was I talking about 2 minutes ago? I don't know. What do I sound like? Maybe you guys just press mute on the YouTube video. You don't have to listen to me. You could just watch my hands move. Okay, so here we are. We've got a perfect square here. Now it's time to empty out the barn or clean out the garage or the shed or whatever, wherever you store your extra shit. Oh, this video is not for kids anymore, I guess. Am I going to get censored by YouTube? All right, 49/16. Move it to the right-hand side. I was going to clean the garage today, but it's 100 degrees out there right now, so I don't think I'm cleaning the garage today. All right, so I moved the 49/16 over. Now I'm going to multiply both sides by 4. Remember not to distribute the 4. Just set it out on the porch. Remember in class, what would we call this, guys? Little brother. You got it. Little brother. Yeah, little brother waits. So now your 49/16 multiplied by 4 becomes 49/4. You are so close. So close. One more step. All you got to do is move this 10. Subtract 10 from both sides, and you are done. See if I got enough room to write the answer down here. So the answer is y equals, I don't know if you can see that y. If not, I'll write it again. 4 times x plus 7/4 squared minus 89/4. And that is your vertex form. While I'm rewriting this, you're probably over here thinking, how the heck did he get 89/4 out of that? So this is the vertex form. How did I get 89/4? 89/4? Well, it came from here. 49/4 minus 10. I just multiplied my 10 times 4. So when you multiply 10 times 4, it becomes 40. Yeah. So now you have 49 and 40. Well, now you know where the 89 comes from. The 89 is just 49 plus 40. Okay. You probably already knew that, but I don't know. I can't hear you, so I have to assume the worst. All right, so we're done with this problem. The vertex is the opposite of 7/4, so negative 7/4 and exactly 89/4. I want you to do 2 decimal places. So that'll be negative 1.75. You could probably do that one in your head, right? 7 divided by 4. Yeah, 1.75. Negative, of course. Negative 1.75. 89/4. Can anybody do 89 divided by 4 in their head? I can't. So it's negative 22.25. I probably could, but in this particular example, why don't I just show you the way I think you're probably going to do it. Negative 89 divided by 4 is negative 22.25. So that is your vertex. I typically don't graph the ones with decimals. You saw the problem that I had with my graphing board. I mean, I could barely fit the last one on there. So to try to actually graph decimals would be beyond the scope of this particular lesson. So let's just skip that. And I'll keep the test. Any of the problems on the test that you have to graph, these will always be whole numbers or maybe negative integers. You don't have to worry about plotting decimals unless you become an engineer or physicist or something like that. Anybody out there want to become an engineer or a physicist? Okay, we're done. One more example. Yeah, we're done as soon as we do one more example. So I don't know, you might want to summarize all your work here. You got your y-intercept, you got your 2 x-intercepts, and you got your vertex. I've got all my answers on the board before I erase them. Oh, and you also have your vertex form up here. Notice this 4 out in front doesn't really tell you much in this particular problem because I didn't ask you to graph it, but that 4 tells you that the graph opens up like this. It's a positive number, so just in hindsight, if you want to look back and think about your life, you know, that's what just happened. Yep, that just happened. Okay, last example. I don't even remember what number I'm on, so I'm just going to call this the last example. Find a function, a quadratic function. That's the topic of the day. With a vertex at -1 and 3, passing through the point 2, 30. So I give you sort of a description of the parabola. Just a rough sketch of what it looks like. That's the vertex at -1, 3. And then it's passing through the point 2. And I'm not really going to count to 30. This is just a rough sketch. So I'm just going to put a dot and call that 30. If I was using the graphing board, look, I don't even have 30 spaces. It would be very difficult. So that graphing board was kind of a waste of my $8 or whatever it cost. It's too small. So that's the basic idea. You've got a graph. You know it passes through 2 and 30. And it has its vertex at -1 and 3. So it's all about the labeling. This question's all about labeling. The -1 is h. The 3 is k. The 2 is x. And the 30 is y. The vertex is always h and k. And then the point is always x and y. So you're going to start off with a model. It's the model that we've been using for the last 2 days. Y equals ax minus h squared plus k. The only thing you don't know is a. A is the unknown value. I'm going to give you h, I'm going to give you k, I'm going to give you x, and I'm going to give you y. You're going to have to find a. So just plug all of these numbers in. Y is 30. X is 2. H is -1. Be careful. Yeah, if you accidentally screw up that sign, the rest of the problem is just a waste of your life. All right, and then K is 3. There you go. Now you're going to solve this equation for A. So you got 30 equals A, 2 plus 1 squared. 30 equals A, 3 squared. 30 equals A times 9. I know my A's and my 9's look alike. You're going to subtract 3. I ran out of board here, but I like to put the 9 in front and the A next to it. It really doesn't matter what order it is. Divide both sides by 9. And you're going to get A by itself. So what's A? A is 3. And you're done. You do have to write the answer correctly. So the answer is the model with the A plugged back into it. So the answer is y equals 3, and then x minus -1 squared plus 3. I don't like to have double parentheses, and it's probably safe to say you don't want to type 2 sets of parentheses either. So let's get rid of the redundant parentheses and just write our answer like this. If you want to leave the extra parentheses, I'll still mark it right, but you're working too hard. Try to get rid of any redundancies that are not contributing to the answer or not changing the value of the answer. So, okay, we're done. Have a good weekend. If you have any last words or any last questions, I'll be on Zoom on Monday. You can ask me questions before you take the test. Okay, peace.